So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
You know I blame it on industry. I blame it on.
So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
I woke up 7 times a day. It's easy feeling so long as you came. But baby, get by a minute into force. Oh, I didn't notice it's all getting full. But only when got been back, just riding got me.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Cannabis and Coffee with Tamarijuana. Apparently, TELUS is playing a funny joke on everybody today because we're having Wi-Fi issues. So sorry for the delay this morning, and change of guest as well, because my previous guest, Brittany Ann Guerrera, was also having issues with Wi-Fi this morning. So we're kind of winging it today, and we're going to have Tim Meehan on with us this morning instead of Brittany Ann, and Brittany will be with us next week once TELUS gets their shit together and we all figure out what the heck's going on with our devices. So I don't really we've had I guess not too much going on in the East Kootenay this last week. We've got the provincial elections, of course, coming up here in BC, and that's something that, you know, with none of them really having any marijuana policies, it's kind of a hard pick. I mean, the BC Liberals on one sense, you know, have been in power now for about 16 years and haven't really come up with a conformed marijuana policy either. I mean, the Liberals federally have come up with policies, but now with them stating that they're going to push legislation through here right away and then have legalization out by 2018, they're going to kick it back to the provinces, which is going to, you know, leave each province to then, you know, probably kick back to the municipalities or have some sort of, I don't know, different regulations per province is basically how it kind of sounds to me. So in BC, hopefully, because, you know, we have many dispensaries running here. I actually, just in this area alone, there's 8 in Nelson and 3 now running in Kimberley. None in Cranbrook quite as of yet, but we're still hopeful that, you know, we're going to be able to push them forward with, you know, the federal regs that they're going to allow dispensaries to stay open. And I think that's something, there's a lot of discontent, I think, when it comes to many of the patients and what I've been reading over the last week about, you know, LP versus dispensary and how some dispensary owners are made to look like greedy money grabbers. Well, what's the difference between them and the licensed producer wanting to take a monopoly of the patient's medication? So Tim and I have been kind of discussing this over the last week because he's visiting actually here in East Kootenay at my house with me. So Tim, we've been kind of discussing the licensed producer versus the dispensary. What's your kind of stance on that?
Good morning, Tamara. See, I've always thought that there's a place for both the large and the small in any industry. What we're seeing right now is a big fight between the large and the small, but because thanks to Allard and Owen Smith and a few other court cases, the LPs were banking on a business model where personal production would go away. It's not going away. In fact, I am out here doing market research. I am thinking about starting a craft producer in Quebec. So I am definitely, you know, I have a bit of a bias here. There is a place for everybody. The larger ones are just keep consolidating, getting larger. And of course, you know, we've had problems with pesticide with certain LPs. I think that's endemic to a large operation. I mean, look at Robin Hood Flour. I mean, they have that E. coli problem now. So, I mean, everybody has, you know, when you get big, when you scale, you're going to have bigger problems. But I think a lot of this stuff, the dispensaries versus LPs, dispensaries are selling bad. You know what? You go to the grocery store, you go to Sobeys, you go to Overweightia, you go to wherever, and you get a bad head of lettuce. Does that mean like you see the Oregon lettuce producers saying, see, BC lettuce is bad. This is why. No, you don't see that because it's lettuce. Mark Emery said something very profound that always stuck with me once. He said, you want to buy your lettuce, you buy your lettuce from a biker. And it's like, no. Well, these guys are still acting like bikers. They're still, you know, slandering each other, going around. I mean, I'm hearing I've been involved with this for almost 30 years, I think. But I mean, so I hear a lot of stories. I hear a lot of BS too. And I'm trying to figure out the difference myself. But you know, this is market. This is the birth of a market. We saw the same thing with alcohol when it came out of the prohibition. You know, go back and read. It's a cycle. There's nothing new under the sun. Everything is a big Ouroboros.
Yeah.
Go back and look. I mean, if you read your history, you'll see the future. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I think that, you know, with craft cannabis and with, you know, a lot of people wanting to craft, because apparently somebody was telling me, I've got to go back and do my own research, that the ACMPR now allows patients to sell their overage. Now, I have nowhere read that anywhere, and I'd like somebody to, you know, clarify that for me. But apparently, that's what the ACMPR. I can't see that. I mean, I know that I did 6 months of house arrest for sending 4 grams in the mail.
LPs are allowed to sell their overage. If you're an LP licensed, oh yeah, that's how Metrum and Organigram and all these other LPs can sell. Oh, we're out of this stock. I don't know if you know, Canopy has basically. Canopy, Tilray, I don't quote me on this, but they have a consolidated website where you can order from now. Yeah, they're trading back and forth all the time. The big guys can't. The little guys, though, if you do that, that's PPT. You know, that's you know, you're outside your license, you can lose your license. And, you know, my big thing is there's a legal concept called champerty that lawyers will know about. And this isn't directly a champerty situation. I call it a constructive form of champerty, like constructive dismissal in labor law. The government is protecting the big guys. The dispensaries, though, you know, except if they have good lawyers or political connections, are on their own. So, you know, we're an uneven playing field right now, and I think looking into this, there's going to be a lot of future lawsuits down the road, not just because of the poor quality and the pesticide and that, but because I can't say for sure, I don't want to libel anybody, but I mean, there's a lot of connections between the government and certain LPs, and you know, if you dug into those connections and the financial connections, I think you could very easily do so. I think if, you know, put FinTrack to work, or, you know, a bunch of forensic accountants in the Caymans, or maybe, you know, in the Channel Islands perhaps, you know, looking into these things, I think you could find a lot of interesting connections and maybe make a case that, yeah, the government never intended to have smaller players. They wanted their buddies in the big boys. Well, you know, it's not going to happen. I mean, it's, I don't know if they really anticipated. I mean, we're in the era of Donald Trump as president of the United States, where I don't think what their plans are going to happen. So.
You know, I think a lot of plans that, you know, have been happening are happening with, you know, the rates and stuff. And that's the unfortunate thing.
That's expected.
You know, about, you know, having, you know, small business owners trying to go out and forge ahead before the law, like Teresa said last week, prior to the law, and then they get shut right down.
I mean, this is simple economics. If you're a first market mover, I mean, that's just good business sense. But the thing is, you know, in different, like, I mean, for example, I would never set up a dispensary down east, whereas in Vancouver, I mean, hey, you know, as long as your variances, you know, and your zoning is fine, or if you have the right connections, or, you know, I don't know exactly the whole process in Vancouver, but, you know, this is the thing. We're in, my favorite expression used to be, we live in 13 different countries. It still is. We live in a Schengen area. This is not a country. We are uneven. Quebec is a totally different animal too. The police and the culture there are anti-federal law enforcement. The police, I mean, I had an accident a couple months ago, and in Ontario, they'd be, like, oh, what's this? What's this? The cop was more concerned about whether I was hurt or not. I mean, that's the difference in the attitude. I mean, and it's a different vibe there completely. I mean, it's a different nation. It's a different country.
Yeah, I found that when I was in Montreal too. It's a whole different vibe in Quebec. But you're right. Like they live under, what is it, a common law more than a civil law, civil code, rather than the legislation that we live in.
And it's well defined. And this is your infractions. This is this. We're under the common law, which allows for a lot of shenanigans and a lot of play and a lot of fun legal stuff. And that's why lawyers make a lot of money outside of Quebec. But no, I think we're not really we're bound together, but because of war and death, and because of we protected our continent. So that's the basis of it. So I mean, if you think about it, really, this is Canadian in the sense, but I mean, I'm out here in BC, and the vibe is 180 degrees from what it is in Ontario. I mean, I never really want to go back to Ontario again. And I spent 25 years in Toronto, and I mean, I think that warped me, to be quite honest.
Well, I know, I know you've been saying that too, like a different vibe, and because we live in such a huge country, I mean, let's face it, it's 3,000 miles just to get to Toronto.
3,000 miles from my house to yours.
Right.
I looked it up.
Yeah. So, 3,000 kilometers. Sorry. Right. Sorry. So, in hindsight, it's hard for us to keep connected and network together, all on the same page, all with the same cause, all with the same idealism, to try and get it, because every corner of this country is a different culture, quite frankly. Like you said, difference of Quebec, different in Ontario. Out here, even Cranbrook, comparably to Vancouver, is totally different dynamic. Like it's
Canadian very French versus Montreal French versus Outaouais French.
Right.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, exactly. So within Quebec, there's how many different cultures. But like I said, even comparably Vancouver to here. Yeah. Right. Like I mean, here it's fairly conservative still. Like I'm finding that as I foraged out, I went actually to try and get Dana Larson here. And I approached one of the local restaurants that I was told that's a brand new restaurant. They do organic food, and that they were, on the same page kind of when it comes to vegetables and organics being marijuana or cannabis as well. So I approached them to have an intimate dinner evening, to have Dana come and do his overgrow. And after the email, got no response back. And I was like, really? I was told by another person in town to approach them about this. And that's what I've kind of gotten. Doors slammed, even with a 420 smoke out. Like I was told, it's all family oriented parks. We don't want you doing anything like that here.
This is the home of Sam Steele.
Sam Steele, I know. Well, Mount Baker, actually. Yeah. It was Colonel Baker that founded Cranbrook. So it was basically military and RCMP based right from the very beginning.
Well, this is was it Neil Magnuson getting kicked out of the Royal Canadian Legion? I mean, it's kind of to be expected. I mean, there's a certain element. We're not there yet. Not every place is downtown Vancouver. No. Unfortunately.
No. And I actually, a girlfriend asked me, where can I find a dispensary at the coast? I said, just drive down any street. You'll see one or two down almost any street. And if you can't find one, just ask anybody standing on a street corner. They will tell you.
You mentioned Dana Larson. I was just thinking today, I was talking about activism. I had a letter read on As It Happens in 1997, and I wrote, and I think I told Dane, and he wrote back, and I just want to tell people, little things along the way sort of give people encouragement, and if you see a new activist there, try to help them out, because you never know what may happen with them. I mean, that was one little thing, and I had other things that have brought me to where I am, but just pay it forward, I would say.
Right. Well, I mean, there's lots of other activists that have, I think, catalyzed a lot of us.
Yes, definitely.
Honestly, I had...
Mark Emery, I read Jack Harer's The Emperor Has No Clothes out of City Lights in London. Right. So, I mean, I'm a special case. I'm kind of like the Forrest Gump following Mark Emery around.
Well, they wouldn't want to do it. You might not want to say that too loud now. But, I mean, I can't say that, Mark wasn't catalysted in my mind as well, too. Like, Mark and Jody supported me when I first came out, too. I supported them. And it's not that I don't support them now. I think what they're doing is, I don't want to put a label on it, but I think it's good and bad, right? Like, I mean, they're pushing the envelope forward with the dispensaries and pushing and pushing and pushing. But maybe right now is not the time. I don't know. I've also been reading a lot of conflicting comments about that online. But you know what? Like, we have to also remember, it's online. It's Facebook. We don't live in Facebook, people. Like, you get a life.
It's funny. I remember Julian Assange had some legal troubles, and I instantly thought of Mark Emery, because I used to correspond with him years ago, and I noticed he's a lot like Mark Emery. I think Mark and there's a lot of people have a very different look at the way of looking at the world, and I think in BC there's a lot of tolerance and a lot of things that maybe don't fly out in Eastern Canada. I can tell you Montreal is a very special case. Montreal is much more like Chicago than any other place in Canada, and if you do not have established connections and players, I think you're going to run into trouble, and we saw what happened. I'm not going to comment further on that, but I mean, different places have different vibe and different relationships with cannabis, with law, with tolerance. And what flies in Vancouver will not fly in Ontario, and maybe vice versa. So we live in 13 different countries in a Schengen area.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. Like, and that brings me back to my first comment. Right, exactly. That brings me back to my first comment about how the fact that we're going to have a patchwork legislation across Canada when it comes to legalization.
My opinion is this is agriculture. This is provincial. I wrote to that when that framework and the task force, and all I wrote, I didn't answer their survey. I said, I want this to respect division of powers. They knew exactly what I'm talking about. There's cases, Hauser, Malmo's case, Clay and Levine, and this is getting into the hardcore legal end. But the concept of federalism, between powers, division of powers between the provinces and the feds, it's always been very tenuous because we have these convention treaties. But in Canada, these are subservient to the Constitution and Charter of Rights, and that is a health issue which engages the provinces, and let's put it this way, there's a lot of opportunity for growth right now. I'm still a little uncomfortable. I think the market is a little too gray. We'll see what happens after bills come out, but the government's going to delay it as much as they can, and I really think the courts are going to put the stake in the heart of the vampire at the end of this.
Well, I think that's where we've all been, kind of led to believe legislations will change things. But when it boils down to it, it's always been a court ruling that's actually changed anything.
Yeah.
And, and that comes along with cannabis right from the get-go, right from HITS, and, then that was back in the late 90s. So, and that was patient right fighting. And I mean, in reality, like, we shouldn't have to go to court to fight for something that's fundamentally a right for constitutionally and charterly, right? And putting, a substance into your body isn't really against the law per se, just the trafficking of it and the growing of it and the production of it.
It's money. I tell people, formerly, when they were opening compassion clubs, look at Philippe Lucas. He got an absolute discharge because he covered his bases. He was a nonprofit. He was helping sick and critically and chronically ill people. It was definitely, I went there. He couldn't give me bud without the paperwork. And I'm like, I wouldn't expect you to. So, I mean, if you operate under this level of professionalism and you're not making money, I helped the National Capital Compassion Society in Ottawa. We've never really ran into any trouble, and everybody knew what we were doing. And this is the thing. If you're making money, if you're driving Bentleys, if you're unless you're connected with the LPs, of course, with that caveat. But if you're being flagrant and doing this, you're going to run into some troubles. And, we're still at that stage of the game. I mean, that's unfortunately the way things work.
Oh, okay. I get that. Like, that's the whole, the rigmarole of it all, right? With anything that's, becoming larger scale, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, these licensed producers too, like you mentioned too, with the recalls. Again, back to the point of, look at, Robin Hood flower.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, as you get larger, you're going to get in trouble, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm also, hearing and seeing, the edible portion of things. Like, for example, we went up to the dispensary in Kimberley yesterday. First time I've been there, guys. And it wasn't the Tamarack, it was the Earth Naturals Earth Own Naturals, it's called.
Yeah.
And I was actually fairly impressed. It's a nice, clean little
Yeah.
place. We went in, and the person that was there was very knowledgeable. She was very knowledgeable. But then, of course, because I make candy and because, you know, we are having a garden, that they also have paperwork that you can go in and everything that they ask on it, even for edibles, on this form for application to bring your edibles into this dispensary, they want a personal food safety number, registration number. So that means that if you're baking or doing candies or anything, to take it into a dispensary, they didn't necessarily say it had to be lab tested, but they want to make sure you have your food safety. So that's something, you know, to think about too for the future as well, because a lot of us are doing baking at home. A lot of us do have personal food handling, which, you know, I do, but some people don't. And that's something that I don't think a lot of bakers take into consideration, that you have to have.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm not happy about the space I have. Like, I'd like to rent out my own, you know, industrial kitchen.
There's a solution to that in Ontario. If you look up, I think it's called the Twin Rivers Food Hub. It's in Montague Township in Lander County in Eastern Ontario. A friend of mine uses that to, she works at farmers markets. That's fully certified. I mean, I've worked in there. There's video of my Instagram with my friend Tina running a RoboCoop. It's all like, it's meant for small scale people to bring in. Now, I don't know about cannabis or their policy on that, but that's, you know, like there's maker labs out there too for electronics. People are making cooperatives. I mean, they have all this stuff on the West Coast here.
Somebody suggested to me that we should have like an arborist, or like, you know, like a lab testing place for patients in every town. Like, you know how you take your gold in when you're gold mining and they weigh it out and they test it, make sure it's all gold.
Put it in with farmers markets and the existing or agricultural
have an office in town where patients that are growing their own
Food
medicine
inspection.
can have, like a food inspection.
CFIA.
Make sure there's no mold. Make sure there's no, make sure that, you know, it's lab tested. Possibly be able to give your THC and your CBD, CBH levels.
Well, that's what Robin Hood, my parents met at Robin Hood Flower. That's what they used. They had their own labs on site.
Right.
I mean, you got it. This is professional. This is the big time.
And the licensed
You gotta have
producers
this.
do have that. Like, they have to have a lab on site.
Yes.
But I mean, if it was something like another business idea for somebody, you know, open yourself an office where you're just doing lab testing for cannabis, so that patients, and, you know, because I mean, right now I think you have to send it off to somewhere on the island. It's $75.
Yeah, it's limited. Well, that's because there's a choke point, because Health Canada will only give licenses to certain things. Now, of course, there's other places where you can test, but they're not licensed. And then you can get into trafficking issues and stuff if you don't have the right lawyers. And, well, I'm not licensed. Go talk to Kirk Tusaw or John Conroy or somebody about that. But I mean, there's liability issues you got to be careful of. But yeah, that's a great idea. There should be. The reason that all these common sense solutions don't work is because the choke point is the licensing. I think there's money there waiting. I tell people, oh, Trump. Trump is basically getting all of the Colorado industry scared, and all the money is coming north. You should thank Donald Trump. He's probably going to help the BC cannabis industry and the Canadian industry in general more than anybody. So, I mean, you know, this is the thing. It's just a matter of money. Once the money is into it, I don't think I think we're getting to that point too. There's so many people, including myself, poking into the business of LPs, the connections with the government, the connections with the established players and the liberals and the Privy Council and all this other fun stuff that nobody really cares about. Once that comes out, it's going to be just like, well, I call these places grocery stores because it's food. What happened?
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. I was going to let Tim finish, but I just said, well, we'll just take a quick break. So we're going to take a quick break right now. I'd like to thank my sponsors, who are 12 High Chicks Magazine, Remos Nutrients, Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society, MUM, Maritimers United for Medical Marijuana, and the Haley Rose Foundation. We are going to play a song that has been submitted by somebody who was listening to my show last week. His name's John Tessier, and the song is Like the Sun. We'll be back in a minute.
Is a public service announcement from the Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society. The Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society is a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring improved access to therapeutic cannabis and cannabis byproducts in Canada. With a federal government that has committed to legalizing cannabis, We feel it is our duty to ensure that the medicinal use of cannabis doesn't get lost in the process and that there are clear distinctions made between the medicinal and recreational use of cannabis. It is our mission to ensure that government regulation doesn't get in the way of a sick, disabled, or terminally ill person's right to use or produce this amazing natural health product. If you would like to get involved, you can contact us on the internet. www.canadiantherapeuticCannabisPartners.com. On Facebook, CTCP Society. Or search Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
I saw you walking on a crowded street. I saw the wind blowing through your hair. The clock slowed down that moment when you walked by, and my heart raced for your beauty by design. And baby, you brighten up my day. You dim the lights in all my favorite ways. You dim the lights. You dim the lights. And now you're growing deep inside my mind. I'm still fixated on that moment you walked by. You were like the sun on a cloudy day. You gave me hope when I was losing faith. Hey, oh, hey. You feel so close, but yet you're far away. These quiet games we play through silent serenades. And baby, you made my afternoon by being pretty and just passing through. By being pretty and just. And now you're growing deep inside my mind. I'm still fixated on that moment you walked by. You were like the sun on a cloudy day. You gave me hope when I was losing faith. Hey, oh, hey, oh. You gave me hope when I was losing faith. From dusk till dawn, you come along running through my mind. The memory of you is bittersweet. You were like the sun. Hey, oh, hey, oh. You gave me hope when I was losing faith.
All right, and we are back. And thanks, John, for sending in and submitting that song. We, ask anybody that's a local artist out there to send and submit your stuff to lifestyleradio.net to Al Rapp, and he'll listen to it and take a listen and see if we can't use it on our network, because we're always looking for new stuff on the network. It's always good to have new people and new songs and new stuff. So was talking to Tim Meehan. We've been talking about licensed producers and dispensaries and legalities and politics and all kinds of stuff when it comes to the new realm of what legalization may or may not look like in the future. But we have to go back to the point too, where are we going to see it? Because we still have to go through 3 readings in the Parliament, 3 readings in the Senate, and they say by 2018, they could take till 2050 before they get this done. So again, I don't know what more. I mean, there's so much more we could be doing out there. I mean, if you're a liberal follower or liberal, if that's your political party, I suggest, and it's been suggested to me because I was out there campaigning for them, to get a hold of that member of parliament or your friends in the Liberal Party and start talking to them, because we need to make sure that every angle of this legislation is going to fit the needs of everybody. And the way I'm looking at it, it's not going to fit the needs of everybody. And that's, I think, one of the biggest concerns that many of us have, because a lot of us are crafters. We grow for ourselves. A lot of people have been growing for themselves for, many years, never mind having a license or not having a license. In this part of the country, I will tell you, I can confidently say there's probably more illegal growers in the East and West Kootenays than there are legal growers in the East and West Kootenays. And for this area, we have to look at that because of the fact that there's no industry out here. Like logging, meh. Really, it's not really that great out here anymore. Tech is a huge coal mine out in Sparwood, but that still leaves a very limited, and why it's so conservative out here, because they do drug testing. So none of the guys out at Tech are cannabis consumers because they can't be. It's not that they don't want to be or that they wouldn't love to be able to use cannabis as a medicine. They just can't. They're random drug tested, doesn't matter. You can go driving up to the gate and the drug truck will be sitting there. And before you even get on site to get to your truck, you're being drug tested. So that's one thing, another aspect of what are they going to do with that, with the labor standards boards once we get legal cannabis. And another question that's been brought up too with the 4 plants, 100 centimeter regulation. What's the RCMP going to have? New pants that have a 100 centimeter line drawn on their pants so that the police forces can run around making sure you only have 4 plants in your yard or your house and that they're all 100 centimeters. So there's a lot of questions, I think, being asked by a lot of people, including the general public. Like I said, I was in a town hall meeting on the 14th, and in that meeting, honestly, the numbers came out. There was 3,338 people on the line for that meeting. And that's just in this East and West Kootenay riding. And the comments that were made were, we've been doing this for this many years, and we're scared. We don't want to come out. We can't afford to become a licensed producer, nor do we really want to be under the regime of a licensed production site, because becoming a licensed producer from a designated grower, as a designated grower, you still have to keep logs and everything for your patient and everything, kind of in realm. But before, Health Canada really wasn't looking at that. When you become a licensed producer, you have to have lab techs, you have to have PhDs, horticulturists. You have to have a large realm of people being employed that cost a lot of money. So when you hear people coming out saying, well, you only need about $5 million to set up a licensed production, I'm thinking, you're on drugs. You're smoking better stuff than I am. You haven't even built the building yet. You need a 44,000 square foot warehouse or a building build. Don't you think that's going to cost you $3 million?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, first of all, I want to give a shout out to my old MP, Mr. Tomato, Pat Finnegan from Miramichi Grand Lake. He's my old Liberal MP, and he runs a couple of Mr. Tomato greenhouse locations in Rogersville or Moncton places. So I think he's got the solution to what we should do. I mean, this is the thing. They've made these ACMPR regulations so restrictive. They treat it like plutonium. That's why I haven't put any money into it, because it's too restrictive now, because there's this artificial fear. I mean, you still have Bill Blair going around saying, oh, it's this, and we don't know what timeline and stuff. He's put in there to be obstructionist. And McClellan, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised at the last minute. I mean, it's weird because I thought I saw her in the grocery store 2 weeks in Ottawa, 2 weeks before this framework dropped. And I was like, I don't know, should I scowl at her or not? Anyway, she was just shopping. We leave her, in Ottawa, you just leave people alone. But no, I was pleasantly surprised. But Blair's being the bad cop. I don't know what these people are doing if they think that they can take an agricultural product and people, as they get more knowledge about it, still believe that it's so dangerous. I mean, it's like wheat or tomatoes or lettuce. I mean, this is the thing. You're treating it like this commodity. Because of the prohibition, you're treating it. Now it's sort of, it's ubiquitous here in the Kootenays. You can go anywhere. So I mean, there's still ripping, but I mean, there's not as much as there once was. Right. And I think that's what we need. Maybe there is a scheme to this where they have to sort of grow
But don't you
gray
think it should be
market.
brought under the agriculture realm?
Yes,
Like, okay, so
yes,
if you
yes,
look
it
at it
is
like,
agriculture.
yeah, so if you look at it as an agriculture position, you look at wheat and canola and
Yeah.
you know, cost per bushel. I threw this on my Facebook page last week, and I had a lot of backlash because I says, what will happen when the licensed producers and all these other, like, because they say they're going to have 200 of them out by 2018. If these licensed producers are producing so much cannabis that the price of cannabis, because now you can buy it anywhere between 2,500 pounds per pound down to $1,400 a pound. What if they throw it out there at $3 a pound, like the cost of a tomato?
Yeah.
So that then in itself will take the crafting market down to a dull roar, which I think in hindsight is not a good thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because then it makes it that if you're a small craft grower is only going to have 25 plants or
Look
100
at craft
plants.
beer in Ontario. I follow that, how the market expanded. At the beginning, it was very, very restrictive. And I think the Kingston Brew Pub had one of the first licenses. It started off with brew pubs, and then I think Sleeman's, and there was the Amsterdam pub in Toronto. But they eventually, after a period, they allowed them to grow. Maybe that's what maybe that's what their plan is for cannabis. They will allow you, okay, you can have 1,000 plants, and you can have a little boutique set up at that farmer's market. I mean, there's these little farmer's markets that are across Canada, you know, informal, that have been, you know, maybe they'll just come under a license, and you'll have testing, no mold, because that's the problem. I mean, you know, we do need to have some standards.
Well, we have to have some regulations.
And there's so many goofs are in this industry. I'm sorry. We need to get our crap
I
together.
know. I picked up some cannabis yesterday, and I took one pull on it, and you can taste the mold in it. And I was disgusted. It's like, this is moldy, and I can't do this. Like, it's got to go back. Like, there's no way I can even I can't smoke this stuff, right? And I think that's one thing that, you know, you hear people, oh, the dispensaries are putting out moldy pot and this. You don't know that. You know, you hear rumors and stuff. I've bought from the dispensaries in Vancouver. I didn't get any moldy pot. I bought this from the dispensary here yesterday in Kimberley. It looked really good in the display case, but I only bought a gram, so it was a small amount. But I mean, you know, it still wasn't moldy. Like, it was, you know, it was nice tasting. It was, you know, it was watermelon, and I hadn't had some for a while, and it was exactly what I expected. So I was pleasantly surprised, and like I said, I was very pleasantly surprised by that dispensary. It was very professionally ran and cute. It's all like a log cabin on the inside. You walk in there, and everything's in cedar, and it's all like displayed nicely, and the friendly staff, and she was knowledgeable, and like I said, I was pleasantly surprised. Really.
Call Watermelon and complain, and say, get her to call and say, hey, my strain is moldy. You're using you're giving me a bad name.
But it wasn't the watermelon strain that was moldy. It was really nice, actually. That was a nice strain, and I love that strain. Moldy. It's one of my favorites. But like I said, there's so many different, like, you know, you go into a lot of these dispensaries too, and there's so many different strains and so many different companies running. And I asked her, are you trying to keep it local? She goes, oh yes, because like I said, there's between Nelson and Cranbrook, which is only a 2.5-hour drive to the Crawford Bay to the ferry. There are, I'm not even going to speculate how many producers out there. I couldn't even put a number on it, to be quite frank.
I don't ask questions.
No, I don't need to ask those questions, right? But I know that there's been some local Kootenai extracts, I think it is one of the ones that have come out that we bought from, which is a local company here. I have another friend of mine that's working on opening his own extract company here for live rosins, and I'm excited to see that the local economies could be inputted and, you know, and put forward with this happening in our local areas. Because like, seriously, well, you've been here for a week now, and there's no jobs here. Like, there is if you're touristy, but it's very...
This is a little like New Brunswick, except it's a little more, and it's very similar to Miramichi, where my parents live. It's got, you know, the pulp mill closed down, and it was based on, they had an air base, and, you know, and here, you know, the pulp mills are closed.
Yeah, the pulp mills are closed.
There's mining. They're not up to much.
Well, the coal mine does regular layoffs too, right? Yeah. And a lot of, like, the thing is, it's out in Elkford, which is an hour and a half or 2-hour drive from Cranbrook, but there's not a lot of housing out there. Right. And so Elkford, Sparwood, Fernie is pretty much where the mining area, you know, but then you find that you can't find enough housing out there to, you know, so there's people that work at the mine that live here too, which, you know, brings me you know, to the main road kind of thing that I got involved with as well with the highways, you know, because the fact that there's a lot of people that travel these highways that, you know, if they're unsafe, that's an issue, right? Right. And because of and that's another reason why the cannabis out here, and this little portion. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't happen here. It does. There's lots of cannabis out in Cranbrook. But I think that's why we need to have the industry come into areas like this that really have tech closed down to be a ghost town. Like, and that would include Cranbrook as well. It would include Fernie, Sparwood, Elkford, actually over into Alberta, into Coleman, Blairmore too, because a lot of the miners live on the other side of the Alberta border. So that in itself leaves, the industry for cannabis to be quite lucrative.
Well, the money's in processing. That's what I've determined. I mean, it's going to be like wheat. I mean, you don't make your money off the wheat. You make your money off of what the wheat makes. Like Robin Hood, for example, that's what I'm familiar with. Cake mix. You were showing me somebody was interested in a cake mix product recently. I mean, that's where, now I don't know, like we were talking about infusions, how they may not work too well. It may be sort of a marketing thing. And people are going to see through the marketing eventually. I mean, you got to have a good cannabis-related product. A good extract, a good thing. I mean, there's a few product ideas I have as well, but
I've been feeding them candy.
Yeah, candy. The candies work. The candies are very good. I have a problem with my collarbone and my neck, and they relax me a lot. So,
yeah, well, that's good.
Candy is very good.
Yeah,
candy is dandy.
And that's a good thing because I don't have any, like, I mean, I have human guinea pigs, pretty much, I guess. Human guinea pigs, because I don't have access to lab testing and stuff here either. No. I mean, I could, but then I'd have to send it away, wait for the results to come back, and that would hold back.
On animals.
Yeah,
either.
And we don't test on the animals, no. Because the animals, like, that's what, that's another subject altogether, because I know a lot of people that do use CBD high products with their pets, right?
Well, Michael Patrickin and his wife, his ex-wife, I think now, but I mean, they were marketing a product in Alberta years ago about, for joints, for joint pain for older dogs. I mean, it's not a new concept. California and Colorado, I mean, they're miles ahead. I mean,
they really
this is
are.
all the same. I mean, we're just bringing the stuff. See, I think we're on a 5 to 10 year delay, depending on what it is from the Americans. So if you can figure out that, you can have the market pretty much, you can do good. And you need to get into a market. My opinion and my advice for any investors out there: get into a market just as it's maturing. Get in, do as much good work as you can, and get the hell out of there. And then get into something else, because it's going to just get so spread out. There's going to be a sweet spot. Okay, this is my Jim Cramer moment. Your sweet spot probably now until for about the next 5-10 years, but beyond that, really, it's going to be just so general, because cannabis, too many people are going to, the cat's already out of the bag, but too many people overseas will oh wow, those Canadians really know about these cannabis products. So
yeah,
that's
yeah. Well, I see it going great guns for a long time, and
I'm optimistic.
Yeah, and then I also see it peter because, like I said, when you get to the point of, if the licensed producers end up with even more than 200 licensed producers, because I ultimately believe that there will be more than 200 licensed producers when this is all said and done. They're not going to stop licensing LPs, I don't think. They don't think at the end of the year they're just going to say.
I think they'll introduce a lower class of licensed producer. This is what I aim for. I would like to produce this sort of like a class B, whereas, okay, you only have market in a certain area. Like it used to be for beer. You couldn't get Molson export in BC because it was strictly regulated about, you could have these provinces, but you couldn't get Pilsner in Eastern Canada either.
You couldn't get
Old Dutch chips in the box in Eastern Canada. I went to Saskatoon in high school. Like, what the hell? You have chips in a box? And then 10 years later, they're everywhere in Ontario. It's just like,
it's the same as kokanee beer too.
Kokanee beer is another example.
Yeah, and I think we brought that up the last show too, about the fact that different provinces, and we talked about the import-export of cannabis, because BC Bud, let's face it.
That's branding. But BC Bud beer was a beer beforehand too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So with all of that being said, things are going to be interesting, if nothing else.
Yes.
Right. To watch it.
We're watching the birth of an industry. It's very, very exciting for me. As an economic nerd, I'm just elated, and I think I spent a year in Ottawa observing the sausage making and the lack of thereof, and I was working on other projects too, but I'm starting to think, I joked around, I may never go back. I don't know if I will. Maybe not now. I'm still maybe keep a foot in Quebec. I don't know, but
You're on vacation. Right
I'm
now.
on vacation. I want to go to the island for a bit and relax.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the best thing to do, right? Is just take it easy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess we're sitting at 10 bells, and we did a late start, but we're going to wrap the show up today. We had some, like I said, some Wi-Fi issues, which I apparently am still having, but that's all good. So I would like to again thank my sponsors, who are Remos Nutrients. I'd like to thank them because they sent out some beautiful nutrients for my garden, and I'm really excited to get that going. I'd also like to thank 12 High Chicks Magazine. Asia's my boss, and we're writing a new second edition for 12 High Chicks. Should be out here in the next little bit. And so that's volume 2 that's being worked on now. And Canadian Therapeutic Cannabis Partners Society, MUM, Maritimers United for Medical Marijuana, and Haley Rose Foundation. Y'all have a great week. We're going to have Brittany on next week. We're going to try this again. And you guys have happy smoking and a good week. Bye.
Tune into the Pace Radio Show and catch Kim Cooper, Debbie Stoll-Skiffen, or Allison Murden, along with myself, Al Grant, as we talk to Canadian and international cannabis advocates who are working hard to help patients and to end cannabis prohibition. Catch us live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here at lifestyleradio.ca.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Hi, it's Deb from BMA Hydroponics. Whatever you are growing, from vegetables to medicinal cannabis, we have everything you need to succeed. From seed to harvest to processing and extracting, we carry all the brand name products that will help you produce, process, and consume high-quality medicine. Our knowledgeable staff of qualified growers have decades of experience with home production, and all possess either MMAR injunction status or an ACMPR registration certificate. We offer the largest variety of products available anywhere, and if you don't see what you're looking for, just let us know and we'll find it for you. Visit our store at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville, Ontario, or visit our website at bmahydroponics.com. We can be reached at 613-967-9888, Monday to Saturday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/BMAHydro and drop us a line at BMA. Our motto is your success is our success.
So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do